Hello, welcome back to this week's episode of Closed by Mo. My name is Mohammed. I'm hopefully your favorite YouTube host on most things real estate. I'm also a real estate investor and a broker based out of New York City. And with that, in terms of being focused in New York City, today we're going to approach a little bit of a case study in terms of analyzing a deal from a house hacking or buy and hold perspective, because it is the type of strategy that I end up working with a lot of my clients on, especially in Brooklyn. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's case study about a property that's actually on the market, listed currently as of July 2024, and I'll post all the description and the links and everything below so you can take a look yourself in terms of how I would analyze this deal if I would be speaking with a particular client themselves. And I will go into my assumptions, all the things I've done and sort of why I've done them, and then my thoughts and feelings in terms of whether or not I think this would actually make sense. And spoiler alert, it's completely relative. So without further ado, let's jump right into this deal. Now, before I jump into this analysis and what my take is on this overall process, I'm going to post, again, like I mentioned, all the information below, including my report as well. I want to, clarify something here. The way I analyze this deal is going to be very different from the way you analyze this deal, from the way anyone else analyzes this deal, because everyone will have their own priorities, everyone will have their own assumptions that they're going to be taking into place. You might be more conservative or more liberal than I am in terms of certain assumptions over others. You might also say not even factor certain kinds of assumptions into the model because you think, hey, you have a very good understanding of the market. You might even say, hey, these factors aren't necessarily something that's very important to me. For example, one of the assumptions that I've made in this particular model, and you'll see this as well, is I do not account for any kind of property management fee. The reason I don't account for any property management fee is because, number one, I don't have a property manager for any of my properties. I am my own property manager. And number two, 99.99% of my clients are like small to medium operators. They do not need to hire a property manager because they are going to be the property managers themselves. This might be their first property, it might be their second property. They are basically planning on either living very close to the property or living in one of the units in the property itself, which I'll go into in a little bit, and self-managing, so you do not have to account for a property management expense. Again, this might be different for you, it might be different for me. I'm taking, for example, a 5% vacancy rate. That 5% might be 10% for you. It might be 1% for someone else who really understands the market. These are all assumptions that have to be baked into the model, and that's why you'll see that every single model is going to be slightly different, cater to that person's particular perspective and that person's particular viewpoint. There's no necessarily requirement to say that, hey, this is wrong or that's wrong, or that different models will include and exclude different things. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and go over a couple of my quick assumptions here. One of the first assumptions is that you are going to be using a 20% mortgage to purchase this with a 7% rate. Your rate might be higher, your rate might be lower, you might be getting a great discount from a bank that you've done business with, all that fun stuff. That's all relevant, but effectively in this market, what I'm seeing, most of my A-tier clients are getting around that 7%, maybe slightly even lower of a rate. There's a couple of things to also keep in mind. In this property, it is a legal two-family. However, most of the clients that I end up working with, including myself, if we are analyzing a property that has a finished cellar or finished basement space in there, and it's got its own entrance, exit, whatever it is, and it has plumbing and hot water and a bathroom and a kitchenette, that is something that you should consider as rentable square footage. That is something that most landlords, especially small-time landlords, will potentially rent out. In this particular case, it is a legal two-family. However, I am going to be counting the rental income from the basement, as you'll see here, and I'll post all the screenshots here as well. You don't have to rent the basement out. You might say, hey, you want to be living in the basement itself, and then rent out the other two units. Fantastic. That's totally up to you. I'm just letting you know what my assumptions are going into it. With that being said as well, you can see some of the rental scenarios that I've sort of created here. The first floor residential will be renting out around $3,700, $3,750. The second floor is around $4,200 a month because it's slightly bigger, and the basement I'm renting at around $2,000 a month. These figures might change plus or minus 5%. I haven't actually physically seen the property itself. I'm only basing this off of pictures, but it looks like this is where the rental amounts are most likely going to end up. So if you were to factor that into the overall income, you should also keep in mind that this property has I believe 2 to 3 parking spaces. I believe it was 3 parking spaces, which is really important to have in a place like Williamsburg, where you might not necessarily find parking right away, especially if it's in a very dense part of the area. So rental spaces, or I'm sorry, parking spaces in New York City can be rented out. Usually it's anywhere from $150 to $200 a month. In this case, I'm assuming $200 a month, 3 parking spaces, that's $600 a month in extra revenue. Now, if you were to look at the gross rent here, I've calculated, I've cut it off at around year 5 because I'm going to be trying to make a point here that you'll see very soon. But if you look at the screenshot here, you'll see the gross rent goes up over time. Obviously, I've increased it around 5% every single year. So around that 4 to 5% mark is what you should be increasing as a good landlord if you are keeping the property up and well, is around the amount of money you should be increasing, or the amount of percentage that you should be increasing your rental amount, because that's what I'm seeing is happening in the market. Sometimes it could be a little bit less, sometimes it could be a little bit more, but that's basically the assumption that I've been making here. Now, this is where I would say the next 2 screenshots that you'll see are going to be the most important. This is what I end up speaking with a lot of my clients about. And again, I want to clarify from left to right, the columns are year 1, year 2, years 3, years 5, and then years 10. So 1, 2, 3, 5, 10. So you'll see in the first couple of years, you're actually going to be losing money. This is very normal. As a matter of fact, I think it's a little bit understated, because in this particular example, I'm assuming that I myself as the owner am not going to be living in this property. So if I were to assume that I was living in this property, let's say in the basement, and I had rented out the other 2 units, my cash flow would be a lot more negative in the first few years, up until between that years 5 to year 7 mark is what I'm typically seeing. So a lot of times, if you're looking at investing in New York City, whether you want a house hack or you want to buy and hold, you should expect to actually lose money on paper for the first few years, because New York City is not a cash flow market. It is an appreciation, it is an equity, it is a tax write-off, tax depreciation deduction kind of market. That is where you're going to be making most of your money. That is where you're going to see a lot of your advantage. It's not to say that you can't cash flow. If you get creative, you absolutely can. For example, in this case, if you're renting out both legal units, the basement as well as the parking spaces, you can see that the amount of time it'll take for you to cash flow is cut by quite a lot over as opposed to the general norm that I'm seeing for house hacking clients. But it is possible. However, it is extremely difficult, and you have to squeeze very, very hard. That being said, though, typically I would see between years 5 and year 7 is when we start to see cash flow positivity come into play. Of course, it depends on your overall budget and how long you're going to be house hacking for and which unit you're going to be house hacking into. But you should budget the first several years for you not to make any positive income on paper, any profit, because you have to factor in the perspective of not that, hey, I'm going to be doing this to make money, but I would rather be doing this to build equity into my property as opposed to paying rent. That is very important to keep in mind, because remember, your property is going to be appreciating year over year. Your mortgage balance is going to be going down, and a big chunk of that mortgage is going to be paid by your tenants. And number 3, you're also going to be enjoying a lot of the tax write-offs and the deductions that you're going to be coming into play. For example, like the screenshot I have here. Now, your tax filing status is definitely going to be affecting this, and there's going to be limitations based on how you file. So speak with a tax specialist or an attorney or a CPA. I am not a tax specialist. I just know the general rules of the game here. And then I learn how to play it. You can see once you deduct once you include your loan interest, that's a write-off, as well as your depreciation, that's also a write-off, you'll see that you're going to be coming in at almost a 6-figure write-off. And this does not also include, actually, I believe it does include the taxes, the property taxes portion of this as well. So you're going to see why a lot of times buying real estate in New York City makes a lot of sense for high-income earners, because high-income earners are typically taxed at a marginally higher tax rate. So if they're able to buy an asset that is not only an appreciating, tangible asset, now they're also going to be enjoying the tax benefits from it. It sort of, gives them a win-win scenario. And sure, they might have to pay a little bit out of pocket towards their mortgage minus whatever the tenants might cover. But in the long term, it typically makes a lot of sense. That's why I end up telling all my clients, and if you're watching this, maybe you're a potential client or a current active client that we're working on, if you're in it for the short term, it does not make sense. If you're in it for the perspective of, hey, I'm going to make a couple of, a few dollars in the first few years, and I'm going to sell out and I'm going to leave, you're not going to have a good time. And I would hate for you to buy or sell anything based off of that time frame. I mean, sure, I'll make money as your broker, but it's just not a good experience that you're going to be having. And then at the end of the day, you're going to be very upset with me, and you're going to have, you're going to put me in a bad reputation spot, and I don't want that to happen. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I didn't go as in depth as I would have liked, but if you did have more questions, you can always reach out to me. You can put in the comment section below if there's any deals that you think I should be analyzing or shouldn't be analyzing, or any mistakes or adjustments you think I should be making. Let me know, guys. I really enjoyed making this. Bye-bye.